All right, welcome back. We are game 3004 in the winter 2021 semester at George Brown, and it's Mobile Game Development 2, week 1, part 1 of our broadcast. I'll be your instructor for this semester. My name is Tom. Most of you know me. We were together probably for several courses over your time here at George Brown. Some of you are new or returning students, and that's fine. Welcome. So again, I have a background in software engineering, and I love playing games and making games. And I think this semester we're going to have a lot of fun creating your game for Mobile Game Development 2, which is going to be a 3D mobile game, which is kind of cool. Let's talk about the evaluation structure. So the evaluation structure is like this. Each week that you're here, there'll be something that you'll be required to do. Pretty much as a little submission or some kind of requirement for you, whether it's individual or whether it is group work for you to do. So this is a group-based course and a project-based course. So what we're doing is we're making a semester-long practical mobile project with several parts. So it's kind of like several little assignments. The first assignment, which is the team contract, is due on Sunday. So if you, I'll bring that up in a second. Let's bring up the team contract, which you have seen before. So actually, what I want to do first is let's talk about the project that we're making before we go further into the rest. So this is up online on Blackboard. You can see it under course documents. If you go to course documents and if you go to project documents, you'll see several different kind of templates, as well as the final project overview template that's here for you to read. If you want to, it'll give you all the details that you need for your project, what's required, and it'll give you a sense of how much leeway you have to create your game. So again, you are tasked to complete or plan and complete a polished and somewhat original 3D mobile game. This semester, you'll work with a team of your peers. Again, the team size is between 4 to 6, and we just spent the last hour or so team forming. So we've got most of our teams ready to go. Most teams are in between 4 and 6 people at this point, which is good. All right. I know that there's some people that weren't able to attend today. So we'll have to make some adjustments for those people who weren't able to come in, and they'll probably either form a team of their own, or I may take some of those people and add those people to the current teams. Hopefully that will work okay. As most of you should know each other at this point, you guys all being from the 3rd year, or you've spent enough time at George Brown to know most of the people that are in this class. Your group is going to be responsible for providing an industry accurate documentation. That's a game design document. And last semester, when we were in Mobile Game Development 1, I gave you a chance to make up your own game design document. Some of you did really, really well with that. And so you can take the same learnings that you've done in other courses and bring it forward into this course. So you can create a really nice game design document. Each member of the group will be assigned a specialty role that they are responsible for during the course of development. There are 3 specialty roles that I'm asking for every group to have. And the other people in the group can just be generalist programmers if you don't want to take on another kind of specialty. So that'll be your specialty role, a generalist programmer. So let's talk about these specialty roles. The first, I would say, required specialty role for each group is the lead software engineer. And you guys have seen this before, but it's someone who is really comfortable with coding, who cares about coding standards, who wants to build a solid code base, and wants to be a leader when it comes to, how you code your game. All right. They will be communicating with the game designer to fully implement the ideas of the game, because the game designer, and we're going to talk about that very shortly, is one of the other required members. Okay. They're going to maintain a logical coding standard throughout the project, and they're responsible for the creation and management of source control repository. It could be GitHub or Perforce, you choose. There can only be one lead software engineer for the project. However, you can have other software engineers, and you'll see below generalist software engineers is someone you can have. the role cannot be combined with other roles. So you can't have the lead software engineer combined with your lead game designer. That's not going to flow. All right. So this one is kind of like a specialty role. There's a lot of responsibilities for this person. So that's why they can't be combined. Another programmer type is a user interface and tools programmer. Someone who's great at building user interfaces and user experiences is what we're looking at here. A gameplay programmer, someone who really is comfortable with character movement, game physics, and AI, overall game feel. There's room for that. They're going to be working with the lead software engineer and the game designer to create the features related to player movement and physics. And they're also going to create some enemy AI code, both simple and more complex. And they're going to be working with the lead software engineer and any quality assurance tester, so a generalist programmer, to validate AI features. Notice that both these other roles are also going to be making GitHub or regular commits through source control in some way or another. The other gameplay program, the other programmer is the generalist programmer. And this is kind of a catch-all for basically doing whatever job is required. So sometimes what they'll do is they'll do quality assurance. Sometimes they'll do AI programming or physics programming or engine programming or whatever has to be done for the game. So this is the default role. If you don't specify what you are a generalist programmer. And even the producer has that mantle. They all are also a generalist programmer. So that's the one role they can combine with, generalist programmer, okay, because that's what the default is. Game producer, that is notice how big it is here, it's listed. That is a courageous role to take on, and that is a required role. And again, this role is someone who's well organized and motivated and unafraid to push the team to complete the project. Someone who knows the team well. If you're someone who's well liked and someone who has a vision of how they want the project to be run, this role is for you, right? It's challenging because they often need to drive the feature completion for each sprint. You're going to have to resolve conflicts with other team members, chances are, and this individual should be able to work well under pressure. They will have 2 votes when a decision regarding project scope is required. So this is something you've seen before in maybe another form. They're responsible for the overall project management of what we're making this semester, and they're also the prime contact for me. So I'm going to be working with you, whoever you are, as game producer. I'll be talking to you a lot more than maybe some of the other members because you're the person that's organizing your team's meetings and your teamwork. They're also responsible for setting regular team meetings outside of class, scheduling and tracking tasks and group deadlines, responsible to set up and maintain the project tracker, which is Trello or Jira or whatever you want to use. I recommend one of those. Jira more than Trello because Jira is more industry standard nowadays. Responsible for all Blackboard submissions, including the game design document, all presentation files, zip archives, repository links, and video links. You're the person who's the designated submitter as well. And there can only be one game producer for this project. You can't have a backup or anything like that. That is your role. And this role cannot be combined with other roles. So you can't be the game producer and the lead software engineer or something else, although you are a generalist programmer. That's something that is kind of, everyone is a generalist programmer. Let's continue. Technical artist. This group member should have some creative talent and perhaps even some experience with asset creation, editing software such as Photoshop, GIMP, Blender, and what have you. And they're going to be either acquiring or creating assets if they have time and it doesn't interfere with their other programming tasks because they're still a programmer. So that's what the technical artist is. Audio engineer is the same. Notice the stuff in red. They can create their own sounds if they have time. For the most part, there are a different type of technical artists, and they're specialists when it comes to sound. Okay, so again, do I need these roles? No, we don't need them. But if someone is interested in doing sound or art, or working with sound and art, these roles are for you. Okay, still a programmer though, just letting you know. Finally, the game designer, and I say finally, but it's probably one of the most important roles. This is the visionary behind the game, the person who wants to make their game. They have an idea that they want to create, and they're basically working with the game producer and the lead software engineer in order to realize their game. have their game being realized, or from an idea realization perspective. Okay, so if you think about this, they'll be responsible to communicate their idea to every member of the team. They get 2 votes when a decision regarding a game mechanics, which are the rules of the game, and dynamics, how to use the rules to win, is required. They're responsible for defining your game's mechanics and dynamics, along with formal and dramatic elements of story for the game. And they're also responsible, of course, for the game design document. Now, what I mean by game design document is they're responsible to put it together, to put all these elements in there. But of course, they need to work with the lead software engineer to make sure that they can get things done. Like, in other words, like the thing that they're thinking about in their vision is possible, as well as with the producer to schedule everything so that all of their features that they want to get off is something that's going to hit the backlog. Okay, the main product backlog. So those are the specialty roles. So now that you, for the most part, most of you have selected your teams, please make sure that you fall into one of these roles, and do not let yourself, I don't want you to be voluntold by anybody to be the game designer, the game producer, or the lead software engineer. You should volunteer for those roles. Those are things that you should naturally kind of tend towards. If you don't tend towards any of those, then choose generalist programmer or technical artist or audio engineer or something else. Questions around specialty roles before I move on? I wanted to talk about this because when you're team forming, this is something to think about, especially next week when there's your team introduction presentation. You're going to talk about what everyone's going to be doing for the rest of the semester. All right, I'm moving on. So what the heck are you making? You're making one of these 3 types of games: a platform runner shooter, 3D, isometric tower defense game, or a sandbox crafting survival game, similar to Minecraft or Terraria, or maybe even, it's not much of a sandbox, but something that's procedurally generated like No Man's Sky. Okay, so something like that. Don't go too crazy though. Each game will have common requirements, and that means all games are going to have these same requirements, okay? And you're going to build off this base. Every game is going to have a character and or a camera controller. You may choose either first person or third person as an example, or just the camera. For example, maybe you're doing a tower defense game where there isn't really a character, and the tower defense game is the world. We talked about character controllers, the 3 C's last semester, and we're talking camera, and we're talking about that this semester as well. So you're going to build an inventory system. All games should have an inventory system of one type or another, whether you're picking up weapons or items in the platformer shooter, you are collecting inventory resources for your tower defense game, or whether you're picking up items to craft in your survival crafting procedurally generated game. Either way, you're going to have an inventory system. So all games require this. The other one is a health system. So you're going to have a health system that shows the player's health somehow, or the world health if you're a tower defense game. It could be your base health. Whatever you're doing, there must be a health system. A mini-map also is required for all different kinds of games. Something that could be toggleable. You want to toggle it on or off. That's totally fine. Enemy AI is also required, and all enemy AI is required to have AI sensing, some kind of an AI sensing suite, which includes, but is not limited to, line of sight and sensing radius. This should also have, all enemy AI should have pathfinding. All right, so that means they start a nav mesh agent on Unity or something like that. And they should each exhibit simple steering behaviors like seek, flee, pursue, evade, arrival, flocking, pack tactics, or something. All right, so that's every enemy AI should have some of those or most of those, especially AI sensing capabilities. Pausing, saving, and loading your game should be something that all of your games have, all of them, right? As well as sound effects and music. All games will have sound effects and music. So this is your base. All games are required to have this base. Then there are specific requirements for different game types. For example, the platformer runner shooter, there are a minimum of 3 different 3D platforms: static, moving, ramps, elastic, spinning, swinging. Similar to what we talked about when we made our platformer in 2D last semester, you'll choose 3 different kinds of platform mechanics that you want to include. There's also, for the platformer, 3 different types of hazards: spike pit, collapsing platform, time flame, something, as well as an overall goal for you to reach. This could be a door, elevation, tunnel chest, or non-player character that you want to save. All right. Isometric tower defense. One element of isometric tower defense that I want you to explore is resource gathering. So whether you gather it through a tower or some kind of minion or something like that, the player will start with an amount of in-game currency or resources that may be used to build or purchase towers. At least 3 different resources will be available on the map. So example, wood, stone, electricity, gunpowder, metal, whatever. And towers should require at least 2 different resources to be built. Towers take time to build, but cost less resource points than purchasing them outright. Okay, so if you build them up and so on. Tower types. Create at least 3 different tower types: single target, multi-target, force field, resource gathering, whatever. Towers may be purchased with resource points and are upgradable. So maybe you can add different effects to those towers, more damage, whatever. Your game must include a tower limit, maximum 5, right? And towers may be placed anywhere on the map. Towers are also destructible, so they can be destroyed. Enemy types. Create at least 3 enemy loadout variations. Example, higher movement speed, higher health, damage resistance, flying, tunneling, and include at least 3 enemy goal variations: tower destroyers, resource stealers, base attackers, enemy spawners. So lots of detail here for the tower defense game. Okay, but some flexibility too in terms of how you want to, kind of include some of those mechanics. And finally, and it looks small, but the Sandbox Crafting survival game might be one of the hardest to pull off and make it work. First of all, you're using a single themed biome is what I'm looking for. If you can pull off more than one biome, great. But I'm looking for one single themed biome that's a small sandbox, 64 voxels or unit square. We'll talk about that if you're interested in doing this. The level must be procedurally generated, and you must have more than one pass, so that way it makes sense and that it's balanced enough that it's playable. Okay. You must include some kind of day-night cycle or countdown. Enemies come out at night and they seek the player. They are destroyed during the day, similar to Minecraft or Terraria. You have a destructible environment, at least 3 types of tiles or /voxels. It could be rock, dirt, grass, whatever, and at least 3 different terrain types. For example, trees, water, lava. All destructible tiles should have at least 3 states: whole, damaged, or destroyed. So again, this might seem that it's like exactly like Minecraft, but instead of making mobs like Minecraft, you can include, maybe it's going to be a zombie survival game where all the zombies come out at night. And this might be something that you make very realistic looking, similar to 7 Days to Die, right? So there's different ways of doing things that you want to do things. It's up to you. So those are the 3 different types of games. Any questions around these requirements? I know there's a lot here. And I'm sure you're going to come up with some questions as we go. And I've already had some questions around the tower defense game. Example, can I use the tower defense game and can I also have a 3rd-person controller? Yes, maybe. I want to see what your thoughts are. And when you present your game idea, your first crack at it next week, then we can talk about it and I'll tell you if it's okay or not. Okay, so that is the game specific or the project requirements. I know it's a lot, but that's why there's 4 to 6 of you working in a group to get it done. All right, let's get to the next part. You're crazy, Russ. You're crazy. I'm not going to say no, but if you really want to do that, I would allow something like that. Yes. You have all 3 game types at once is what Russell is basically saying. You have to choose which one. Maybe what you want to choose for that one, just to be fair and to answer your question with honesty, I would say choose one as a base. And if you want to have elements of the other 2, you can. Okay, that's what I would say. So that way I'm judging it as a platformer or as a isometric tower defense game or as a survival game. And then you can have the other elements there. But I'm looking at it first there, so it's meeting requirements because I got to be able to mark you somehow. Okay. Okay, so that is the requirements. Let's take a look at the rest of this stuff. So you're going to have several releases, and notice that every week, these are the weeks. Every week there's something. So next week, this week, you're by Sunday, my expectation is that you'll get done your contract. Let me take a look at that, and you've seen it before. It looks something like when it comes up. Come on. Microsoft Word. Okay, so yeah, you put your team name there, team members in here. There should be 4 to 6 slots. Please make sure you replace the highlighted values with your own stuff. You're going to specify meeting times. You guys should do this in a team. You're going to be building a Unity 3D game engine kind of game with C# programming language. Please don't ask me to make it with Unreal or with STL or some other kind of engine. You're going to be using Unity for this semester. Okay, so that's a requirement also. You will decide on the meeting times and so on, and you've seen this thing before. What I'm looking for is for consequences. One of the changes we're making this semester is there's no switching teams. If your team member is being flagged as 0, either they recover or they get 0. That's how it's going to be. You guys are in 3rd year right now. My expectation is that you're able to communicate and work. And so any member that's flagged as non-productive, wow, that's all I can say for 3rd year. Wow, if you're being flagged as non-productive, so that's an issue. And you need to be unflagged, which means you need to correct yourself. That as long as you remain flagged and get 0, you'll get 0 for all of your releases, which is terrible. And I'm talking about the major releases, not the minor ones. Any amendments you put in there, you may want to, this talks about amendments. And what you may want to do, because this is kind of one of your last games at George Brown, is you may want to include some kind of language in your contract about IP, intellectual property, and what you do if you want to take this game further. Because it might be a really cool game when you combine with some really cool, some excellent team members that you might be working with this semester. Finally, you sign the agreement. You say, we, the team of, whatever your team name is, come up with these expectations together and so on throughout this academic term. And then you sign it either with a digital signature or with some cursive script is okay, or you take a picture of it from your phone. But I'd like you to sign all this and date it. And then you submit this by Sunday at midnight. All right, so this is worth 5% of your final grade. If you don't submit it, if you forget to, yeah, digital is okay. But I mean, you'd have to convert this into a PDF, if I believe, if you want to do that. But as long as everyone signs it, I'm good to go. Okay, so that's due Sunday at midnight. Questions around the contract? Okay, so that is your first requirement for this semester. All right, let's take a look at the next one. So, going back to this, so you've done your contract, and now it's this pitch presentation. But actually, what this is not a pitch. It should be listed as a team introduction presentation, and I have that. I've put it up on Blackboard already as another part. So part 2 is your team intro presentation. Let me show you that part now and what the requirements are there. So for the team intro presentation, what I'm looking at, it's also worth 5% of your final grade. It's due week 2. So notice it's due Wednesday, January 20th. That's next Wednesday, not Thursday, but the night before. All right. So you need to have your presentation completed and submitted before you come in on the Thursday. Okay. It's not something that I'm expecting you guys to have just ready for the Thursday morning. This needs to be submitted by Wednesday. Okay. So what is it? You need to put together a little PowerPoint that includes a title page. So that's your team name and team logo. The name and logo must be original and unique, please, as much as possible. Roles, a role slide with all the people that are on your team and what their job is. Specific responsibilities. Influences. So what game are you making? So are you making a runner shooter, an isometric tower defense game, a sandbox crafting game? What are you making? And what are your influences for the type of game, the way you want to make this game? What are the, the mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics that you're going to employ to make this game look like your own? And finally, what are your tools for project management and the schedule that you're going to put together to complete this project? So show me a slide or one or more slide that looks like that. So it says one slide. You can have more than one if you need to. Okay, remember, this is not a game pitch. This is just a team introduction where you're basically going to declare what you're building. All right. Your presentation shouldn't be more than 5 minutes because there's only really 4 slides. Hey, how you doing? My name is Tom. This is my team and my logo, and here's my team. I've got these people on my team. This person's doing that. That person's doing the other thing, and so on. Here are my influences. We're thinking about making this game here. And like Russ said, I'm just mentioning Russ because he mentioned it, we're going to do all the games, right? I don't know. Are you presenting in the lab, Alex? Yes, you are. So you'll be presenting actually throughout the time next week. So when you come into your lab section, you'll be presenting. And then we'll be using the 1 hour of lecture time for any adjustments that we need to make for the project. For example, team switches, all that stuff is next week. All right. And that's why and if you have to present during the lecture hour, I'm okay with that as well. Right. So if you're one of the teams that you only see each other during lecture, then that's when you'll present. Okay. And I'll put that out there as we get closer. All right, so that is your title page, roles, influence, and so on. And then you must be ready to present at the beginning of class. Be prepared to respond to any questions that students have, as well as your MS PowerPoint document or shareable link to Google Slides must be submitted, or your group will not receive a mark for this portion of the semester project, which means you'll lose 5% off the top. That's crazy. Please don't forget to do that. So producers, whoever you are, this is one of your deliverables for next week. Okay, so that is project part 2. I won't talk about all the project parts. And as we go forward, you'll see the requirements for your first playable, second playable, and so on that I'll list. I'll post for you guys. Notice that there are small little releases until we get to the project checkpoint. So I talked about, I don't want to do many presentations this semester. You're going to do 3. 1 next week, 1 at week 7, which is going to replace your midterm test, which is your project checkpoint, right? And 1 during the final presentation, your final week of class, which is where you're going to show me the culmination of your entire game, demonstrate it, and so on. And that's really your game project that you're going to be putting together. When you see first playable, second playable, third playable, alpha, beta, and final, those are the actual releases where you have code releases and functionality come into play. All right, those are the code releases. Along with your project, this is all group work, and that equates for a large portion of what you're doing, right? There's also individual components. And this semester, we're taking on weekly reports, right, that are going to start next week. And there's already one posted called Week 2, which is up in the Week 2 folder of your course documents. So if you go to course documents, and if you look at Week 2, there's already a Week 2 report that you should be filling out by next week. What is this Week 2 report? Let me bring it up and I'll show you. So your weekly reports, what they are is almost like you punching in, to talk about your work. How many hours have you spent meeting with your team this week? What did you do? Did you meet with your team at all? It's your contribution mark more than anything else. So if you notice, it says, here's the week 2. What's the date? What's my team name? What's my student name? What's my ID? Did I attend the team meeting? Yes or no? Right? As an example, because there should be something that is set up for next week because you're creating a bunch of slides. You should definitely meet by next week. Provide details about what you did. And if you didn't attend, why? Right? And then your work assignment completed for next week, you're kind of meeting together and creating your PowerPoint perhaps together. So did you, you completing your assignment would be a yes or a no. And then finally, how many work and hours did you spend doing stuff? Did you meet for half an hour and then you completed all your work and see you later? Or did it take you 2 hours? Like, how many hours did you spend? So this weekly report is going to be basically, given to you every single week for the entire semester starting next week. Okay. It's an individual thing. There are 12 of them, I think, all told. And you are responsible to do at least 10 of them. They are worth 10% individually of your final grade. So if you don't hand it in, or if it's incomplete, you will lose your 10%. Okay, so just don't hand in a blank one and say, well, I handed it in. Yeah, but it's blank, or it doesn't make sense, or, if it's inappropriate, something you put in here is inappropriate, which I've gotten, unfortunately, last semester, you won't get a mark for that particular report. Or especially if it's blank, or I don't know, something happens like that, you'll get 0. So that is your weekly report. Along with your weekly report, there is a peer review. And this semester, we're treating peer reviews slightly differently. Okay. So let me bring up the peer review form, or peer evaluation form. It's something you've seen before. However, what we're doing this semester is treating it differently than what we've done before. You're going to rank yourself and your team out of 5. All right. So first you put your group name, your project title, your name, your student ID, and so on. And then you kind of rank yourself from a contribution perspective out of 5 for this particular release, okay? And the same thing goes with each of your team members. So example would be from 0 to 5, where 5 is fully participated. 4 would be something like mostly participated. 3 is somewhat participated. 2 is somewhat did not participate. 1 is mostly did not participate. 0 would be did not participate at all, right? If I see zeros in this peer review, this is where things are going to change this semester. If a 0 is put in your name, in front of your name, there must be, for the person who's put a 0, some kind of reason why they put the 0 in your name, or a 1, right? No, I'm not going to talk about inappropriate stuff, Nasara. I can't do it. That's bad. Right? But yeah, inappropriate words were used. Let's just put it that way. And other weird stuff was put inside of their weekly reports and peer review. So if treat this right? So be honest with what people have done and yourself. If you score anywhere between a 3 and a 5, no harm, no foul. If I see 0s, 1s, and 2s, this will affect your final grade, right? When it comes to your releases. So again, when we look at the number of peer reviews, we have 5 out of 6 peer reviews you must complete. They're worth 5% of your final grade, and they're in alignment with first, second, third playable plus alpha, beta, and final release. 6 releases, 6 peer reviews. You only have to fill out 5 of them. Worst case scenario, I'll take the best 5. And what happens is, if your team members basically say that you're not productive, if you've been flagged, chances are, I need to see it in your peer review anyway, it will affect the mark that you get on your first playable individually. Example, let's suppose on your first playable, your team did very well and they did a 90%, let's just say, on your first playable. Really nice. You handled all the piece parts to it, but you didn't contribute at all. And most of your team members told you didn't contribute. Your mark is not going to be 90%. Your mark will be lower. It really depends on what the team members say, what your participation is, and the other evidence that I have from your peer review, your work, weekly reports, and so on. Okay, I'm just letting you know it will not be arbitrary. I have a system that I will share with you guys if I have to. I don't want to. I don't want to see anybody falling into that range. But if I do, you'll know it. You'll see it, and you'll get a comment that says you were marked as non-productive for most of your team members for this particular release, and so your marks reflect that. Okay, just letting you know. I'm telling you because this is not just something that I'm putting in to punish you. That's not my intention. Trust me, I have no interest in punishing anybody. I want to reward people who are working well together, right? Because I think that's what it is. And I don't think that anyone likes when people are non-productive in a team environment. I don't want anyone to skate, in other words. I want you guys all to work. You guys are third year. My expectation is that you're going to produce something that's awesome. Okay. And that means spending some time being together and doing the things that I know that you all are capable of doing. Okay. So that's what these things are. And they're also individual marks for you. You can still lose marks in your peer review, even if everyone loves you, if you don't fill it out. You don't hand in a peer review, you get 0 for that particular thing. Or if you fill it out incorrect, inappropriate, or if it's incomplete. For example, I got peer reviews last semester where it said self, and let's suppose there's another guy up here, Michael, not including the Michael that's on our team. Let's say Mike got 5, I got 5, and then someone put the rest in here, and there was like 0. So it's only like Mike and I worked, and no one else worked at all, right? No, that's inappropriate. Tell me about the other ones. Who are they? Do you even know who your team members are? Right? Please put in the team member name at least. You should know who your team members are, right? And if they're getting 0, and if I see 0, 0, 0 over and over again, why haven't they been flagged as unproductive? Right? They should be flagged. You should be telling me. We should have meetings about this because no one should be surprised with what their mark is at the end. Yeah, everyone should know their level of achievement and what they've contributed, all right, for this course. Especially since we have tight timelines, I don't want to put any more pressure. I want you guys to feel like this is easy. You're there, you're part of every meeting, you're contributing, you're doing the code, you've done what you've said you're going to do, and you have a great game. Okay, so that's the idea behind it. So that is your evaluation scheme. Notice that there are no marks here allocated for labs. I don't have a lab mark. However, on the schedule, you're going to see that there are several labs. These labs are going to be bonuses. So if you actually come to the lab and submit, I will post a lab in-class exercise as an example. And if you post your in-class exercise and it's complete, you'll get a bonus. Will it be a big bonus? No, but it could replace a peer review, or it could replace a weekly report or something else like that. Or it could just bump your mark if you've done all those things. Okay. So these are really great things. So, and it's kind of showing me that you're interested in actually producing this stuff and participating in class and so on. Although you don't have to be physically in class to submit it, because remember, I'm creating these videos. You could do things asynchronously. For example, right now we could have people who are watching YouTube who also want to contribute and build their game, but they can't attend class for whatever the reason. Maybe they want to watch YouTube because they get closed captioning support. I don't know. All right, so that is the schedule. So this week we've talked about our project definition. Agile project management was what we're going to be talking about next. I've talked about the team contract that's due. And next week, you're going to do your game intro presentation. That's going to be one of 3 presentations you're going to be doing with 5% of your final grade. Then we're going to get into low poly 3D tile set in Unity. We're going to make it. There's 2 ways of doing that. We can get assets from the asset store and or create it with Blender. And I'll be doing a couple weeks of Blender in our labs during that time. So showing you how to use Blender for hard surface modeling at this point. Hard surface modeling, making tiles, basically tile sets for whatever you're doing. So 3D tile sets. Procedural tile generation is also something that I'm going to be talking about in week 3. Camera controller selection and player respawn and checkpoints. Then your game concept GDD is due. There is no presentation aligned with this release. It's just you getting together with your team and submitting your game concept and your GDD, and it should be more or less driven by your game designer. Further than that, the next week, on week 4, you're working on your inventory system, and we'll talk about how to make one and a mini map and some post-processing effects for color grading. For example, making a scene look like it's nighttime or daytime, as an example. We'll talk about those things and even maybe some skyboxes and stuff like that we can load. So that's going to be happening in week 4. All right. And your first playable is due that week. Notice that here's your game concept and your first playable is like right that week, right after that. So it's not a lot of time. Then in week 5, we're going to be talking about AI agents, nav meshes, and physics. So your gameplay programmer, if there is one in your team, is going to be really interested in joining this class where we talk more about those things than anything else. Week 6, we're talking about destructible objects and in-game object selection. How do we do that? If I want to move objects around, for example, in your survival crafting game, sometimes we need to select an object. In your tower defense game, we need to select resources. As an example, in your platforming game, we need to select objects we find on the ground to pick them up and put them in inventory. Some way of selection. We'll talk about how to do that, right? And then finally, checkpoint 1 is due in week 7. There are no lectures or labs during this week. It's simply presentations. Show me what you got so far is what this is. There is a mark for the checkpoint. So if you notice here, project checkpoint is worth 10%. So that's a presentation that you and your team are going to do over the course of both labs, the lecture, and the third lab as well. So that's what's happening. In the second half of semester, we're going to talk about scriptable objects, graphic optimizations for 3D mobile games, and we're going to build a quest system in week 9. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing there. Then the third playable is due. Third playable, and then before that, we were in the second playable. That means over the break, the expectation is that you'll actually produce something that you're going to be handing in by the end of week 9. Usually when I say when it's due, if it's a release, I'm going to make them all due on Sundays. So you have plenty of time throughout the week to get together and schedule time that works for everybody on your team, hopefully. Okay, or maybe more than one meeting. I don't know. Week 10 is particle effects and 3D explosions. Week 11 is mesh animation with Mixamo. If you haven't done that before, it's kind of neat. And we're going to do organic modeling a little bit. We're going to bring an organic model in or develop one with 3D Coat or some other, or Blender or some other system, right? And then our alpha release is due by then. So this is like we've done our third playable and now we have some actual assets. All the playable releases are going to have some placeholder assets as we're developing them. And each time there's a release, it's going to coincide with things that we've talked about earlier. So example, if you notice, your first release is really, can I get things moving? That's really what it is, right? Your second release should have an inventory system and a minimap because we just talked about that, and maybe some enemies, right? And your third release is probably going to have destructible objects in the game, right? Your alpha release then should have scriptable objects, a quest system, and maybe some particle effects, right? If you see how we're going with this. So it's pretty simple. We're talking about a weather system by week 12, and by week 13, we're talking about memory profiling and QA testing. I was recommending Jira, which is the way to go. Jira for your Agile project management. I'll talk about it again when we get to that part. Week 14, there's going to be a project postmortem retrospective, and that's also when your final release is due. Okay, so your presentation is not due then, just your actual code release is due then. All right, and then finally in week 15, there is your final presentations. There will be no labs or lecture during that week. It's the final week of classes. Okay, so that is your schedule. Throughout the classes, I will be asking you for assignment videos, which means that most of your releases will require one or more persons to speak and to demonstrate your releases and that they're working for the team. I only need one person to kind of demonstrate for the entire team, and then talk about your code, talk about what you've added, your features that you added that particular release. That's what I'm looking for through your videos. Again, the videos should take no more than 5 to 10 minutes. So very short and to the point videos for each of your groups. So one video per group, okay? There are no individual videos in this course. So I'm not asking you to do like a midterm test or something like that. Notice there is no midterm test in this course or final exam, okay? And then let's talk about this week's activities. We've talked about course outline. We've talked about the video demonstration requirements. We've talked about our project definitions. We did group forming during our lecture hour. And now we're going to be talking about our Agile project management review, which I will do in a separate video. I'm going to stop recording this and start a whole new video about Agile project management. But first, before we go there, there's a few things. One, just a reminder that this Sunday at midnight, your team contract is due. Again, if you haven't joined a team, then you won't be able to access the team contract or even see it. Same thing with your team intro presentation. That is due next week by Wednesday night. And again, if you're, I will post some information, an announcement on Blackboard early next week to ask you for when you want to present. Okay. Your first weekly report, as an example, that is also due next week. That is individual, and that is due on the Thursday. Okay, the Thursday. There is a little bit of leeway. I'll give you a worst case until the Friday to get it done. If you don't get it done by the Friday, 0. Okay, that's how this one works. All right, so that is the activities for the week. Any questions around anything so far? Project, the requirements, the schedule, how we're going to run things, any concerns with any of it, please voice it now so we can make any adjustments that are required. And again, for people who are not here, who aren't able to attend for one reason or another, I mean, we have just declared a lockdown. Again, maybe remote, maybe you, for whatever reason, are stuck in a place where you don't have access to a machine, or you're not feeling well, or whatever. Please connect with me if it's any one of those things, because I'm still missing probably about 9 of you that didn't show up today. What should the weekly report entail this week? Well, you're going to be working on your team contract as well as your team introduction. So that's what it should be, right? So when you get together, did you meet? Yes or no? And if you met, did you work with everyone else to get that done? And if you did, that's your assignment for this week. After that, it'll be individual, depending on what your role is. Okay. Any other questions or comments around anything we've talked about so far? If there's not, I'm going to stop this video and make a new one so we can talk about Agile project management best practices. Yeah, just the progress that you're working on right now is what I was looking for, like the stuff that you're doing for next week. That's your week 1 weekly report. Okay, so let me stop recording this then, and then I will see you guys, people who are watching the video, in the next video, which is going to be detailing Agile project management best practices and an Agile project management review with Scrum.